SmartPak fans, welcome back to SmartPak's Ask the Vet video series with our staff veterinarian and medical director, Dr. Lydia Gray, and myself, SmartPaker Sarah. We're here to ask and answer the questions that you guys submitted and voted on. Right. And if your question is selected, you will be the winner of a SmartPak gift card.
Nice.
If you've won a gift card and haven't redeemed it yet, you can email us at CustomerCare@SmartPak.com and we'll get you all set up.
Get on it.
I'm very excited about this series of questions, so without further ado, I'd like to jump into the first one.
Yeah.
Question number 1 was submitted by Valerie on the SmartPak blog, which is blog.smartpak.com if you're looking to submit your question. And Valerie's wondering, as the spring comes and horses start to shed their winter coat, I thought of this question. I wonder if it's going to be about chapstick, because that's the biggest problem I have during shedding season, is when your horse's hair sticks to your lips. It's terrible. She's not wondering that. She's wondering, is it healthy to use a shedding blade to get the winter coat off faster, or is it healthier to leave it alone and wait until the horse will lose his winter coat by himself? It's really interesting. I never thought about that.
I didn't either. It was a very interesting question. Healthy, it's one thing, but I think de-shedding or whatever is fun because you get to buy.
Yeah, I see that you brought lots of toys.
These. My new favorite. Have you tried these?
I have not.
The hands-on
but
toys?
I've heard all of the riders at SmartPak talking about them.
They come in fun colors now.
Oh,
and I
cool.
think by the time this goes up, we might have some. But they have these little nubbins on them and different sizes and both hands, so you can use both hands at once. And horses love them because you can take your finger and get like behind the ear and under the jaw and in on the ankle, the fetlock. So
feels like good for shedding season, but also good for like after sweaty rides.
That and bathing. You can soak these puppies up and have at it. That's so fun. For shedding though, so let's answer a question and then we'll get back to the toys.
Okay.
But I think it's healthy to help the horse shed out because you're currying the skin, and anytime you can massage the skin, it's healthy because it releases oils and it gets rid of dead skin cells that are maybe hanging on. So that's a really good thing. This is fun. Have you tried one of these?
I have not.
The pasture prep, because it not only massages the skin, and because it's plastic, it grabs onto the hairs really well and releases them, but it's designed to penetrate deeper and cross, it uses a cross-hatching mechanism on muscles and ligaments and soft tissue. So it gets deeper even than skin and hair. And I love this one, my horse loves it. But these plastic ones pull the hair out really well. So,
but pull in not like a painful way.
No,
because the hair's already loose.
The hair's dead. So it's a good idea to get rid of the dead hair. It's going to fall out eventually, so why not get rid of it and stimulate new hair growth, stimulate oils and sebum and production of healthy things. That's what's going to produce a good shine on your coat. So we talked about, this one is good for bathing as well as grooming. I think it's called a rubber grooming mitt. It's got little nubbins. This is fun, the Sleeky Z. It's got this metal edge here, and you want to be careful when you use metal ones, like this is just a regular shedding blade, that you don't go across bony areas. Like this is not for legs, hip bones, like the point of the shoulder, the head, any of
withers. You don't want to get that.
Yeah, but where it's just skin over bone, you want to go where there's some muscle or ligaments. There's another curry. A lot of people like this Slick and Easy horse grooming block because of this pumice stone sort of grabs in a nice way, grabs on the hair. So there's lots of fun things here, and I would encourage you to help your horse get rid of that already loose, almost falling out dead hair.
Yeah. All right. Our next question is also submitted by Valerie. On the SmartPak blog. And Valerie's wondering, when should I start my horses on pasture as the spring comes? I've heard after the winter the grass in the pastures gets too much sugar and fructan and are not healthy for horses to graze on. When is the best time to start letting horses out to graze?
That's a really useful question because there are horses who are what I would call carbohydrate intolerant. In that there are some horses you can throw on pasture and they do fine, and then there's others that set foot in a pasture and they develop laminitis, which I think is their big worry, or colic or other things. So it a little bit depends on where you live, and so we don't know where she lives. So
we do not.
Okay, so we'll just answer this for everyone. But the main thing is to know when grasses accumulate sugar, because it's the sugar and the fructans that are the problem. So I forget what grade it was, like some middle school year, where you learned about photosynthesis.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then the opposite would be respiration. So what happens is plants use sunlight and air and water to make sugars during the day. And then they use those sugars during the night to grow and reproduce and do other plant business. I'm not sure what all.
Ooh, plant business.
Plant
that feels
business.
like a good Pixar movie.
Plant business. So at the end of the day, at the end of sunlight, is when the grass is highest in sugar.
Okay.
It's made the most that it's going to make, so that it can use
and then it's
it.
going to do its business all
And
night.
then, and then at the end of the evening, when the sun starts again, is the lowest sugar level.
Okay.
So there's a website that I love. It's called safergrass.org. It's run by Katie Watts. She's not a veterinarian or nutritionist. She's some sort of agricultural scientist. They're actual plant scientists.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. And she says she recommends 3 a.m. to 10 a.m. That's
so just
the
set your
best
alarm
time.
for 2:30.
Her advice
it seems
is,
convenient.
maybe SmartPak will do this, is someone needs to invent a gate opener on a timer
Ooh.
that opens up at 3 a.m. and then herds them back in, I guess, and closes the gate at 10 a.m., whatever.
Well, 10 a.m. you could be out there
Yeah,
by
you could
then.
be out there,
I
right.
mean, even on a Sunday, guys. 10 a.m. is not that bad.
Yeah, so, and of course the grazing muzzle is a good idea too, but
And so fashionable.
oh my
Newman
gosh,
loves
the
his.
look, you know, when you pad it up with things, you can use different colors. I recommend a neon yellow or green, so that if they get it off in the pasture, you can just find it. Yeah.
Do you know what I like imagining just now is when I was a kid, I was in middle school, probably learning about photosynthesis, and I had braces, and you'd get the rubber bands on your braces changed, and you'd do like pink and purple for Easter, and then you'd do like red and green for Christmas. You should change Newman's fleeces for the seasons.
Yeah.
You can have like green and orange for St. Patrick's
Right.
Day.
Right.
You could do a lot.
Well, he does like his beer. So the other rule of thumb that I will give you is, after the spring transitions and the nights are consistently above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, then it's safer to be on grass. When you have warm days, intense sunlight, and cool evenings below 40 degrees, then the plants accumulate sugar during the day, but it's too cold to use it, so they continue to store it.
They don't
so
do
they just
plant
store
business
and
when
store.
it's cold.
No plant business is closed.
Okay.
So they store and store and store sugar, so that morning and the next day, it's loaded with sugar. So you want to wait until the evenings are consistently above 40 degrees. And then also the other rule of thumb, there's so many rules of thumb, that you
That's why you have a lot of thumbs.
introduce grazing gradually. So just because it's now warm days and warm nights, you don't just throw them out. You start with 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever.
Okay. If you want to know why the sugars in the grass could be a concern for laminitis, you should submit that question, and then we can answer it.
Yeah.
Get it voted to the top.
Right.
We can answer that in a future episode.
Right.
All right. Is this right? Our third question also submitted by Valerie on the SmartPak blog?
She was busy or bored.
Valerie has a lot of really good questions. This one is also about springtime. This is very seasonal. I see what you did there, Valerie. This is a good move.
It worked.
How should the feed ration of a horse change in the spring, and should it at all? Is it recommended in general to put a horse on less grain than he was on in the winter? I know each horse is individual. She's watched you before. I know each horse is individual, but I would love to hear about this in general.
Okay. Well, that's something I hadn't thought about, and her direction was, should they be on less grain?
I thought the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think of it as, not for everyone, but for most people, winter, at least where it's cold, is a time of not riding as much or not working as hard or as long, and maybe giving your horse a break because you had an intense show season or something, and so
the holidays get busy, all that kind of stuff.
And so you maybe feed less grain in the winter because they don't need as many calories,
They're not
and then
working as hard.
as you begin to up their workload in the spring, you add the grain back in. But then it got me thinking, Why might you swap that? And it has a lot to do with your horse's body condition score, and I hope that's something, Valerie, that you're checking. Some horses lose weight in the winter, some gain weight in the winter. So you have to know your individual horse. And then how does your horse come out of winter? So if it comes out of winter fat, then yes, you'd want to reduce the grain. But if it comes out skinny and you're going to increase exercise, then you might want to consider, and not always just adding more grain, but adding calories or energy, maybe through fat, maybe more hay, maybe a supplement, a weight gain supplement, maybe beet pulp. There's a lot of choices besides the grain. The other things that I was thinking of are pasture, because it's a question we just answered. Some people, because they know their horse is going to get sugar in the pasture, they reduce the grain and feed more hay and sort of try to fill them up so they don't go out and gorge, and don't allow them to get sugar from other sources in their diet. So they cut back the grains and sugars because they're adding pasture. So there's a lot of thought that goes into this, but I think it has to start with what shape is your horse in, what body condition score, what are you feeding, and is your workload changing, and is the horse's diet changing in other ways?
I think body condition scoring is a really good point, and it kind of brings me back to the first question where we talked about all of our fabulous fun toys. And I think a lot of people, oftentimes when their horse starts shedding out, they're surprised at how thin their horse got over the winter.
Or they kept the blanket on and didn't look frequently.
Didn't really notice. And so I think that's where body condition scoring, rather than just like, oh yeah, he looks about the same, really getting your hands on the horse and really getting a sense for what kind of shape that they're in. And you guys can find a very fantastic blog on body condition scoring.
And videos.
And videos
too,
on how to do it. And so we'll include those in the description of the video.
Absolutely.
All right. Question number 4. You want to guess who it's by?
Well, Valerie?
It is. It is indeed by Valerie.
She is building up those gift certificates.
She is. You're just going to go on a little shopping spree.
Woo.
Valerie, I hope you buy some of the products featured here. If I were you, I'd go for these gloves. I think your horse would appreciate that. And Valerie is wondering, does it make a difference at all if a horse has his or her spring shots early or late in spring? Does it affect the way he is going to respond to the shots or anything else?
Wow. She's really put some thought into these, because honestly, in all my years, that had never occurred to me.
Okay.
So I made a list of the things that I think about when I'm trying to figure out when to give my spring shots. Okay. So now we have to consider the U.S. Equestrian's 6-month rule, the vaccination rule, because you have to give the flu and rhino, or the equine influenza and EHV1, rhino pneumonitis, within 6 months of entering a horse show facility.
And U.S. Equestrian, new name for USEF, United States Equestrian Foundation.
I'm trying to be very good and use the new name.
Yes.
So I know that my last show is October 14th. So I am not going to give my spring shots until April 14th.
Okay.
If I can help it. So that's one consideration. Another one is, am I in compliance with collie care guidelines?
Okay.
There's a lot of horses in that program, and it says work with your veterinarian, have your veterinarian administer vaccinations. If it's been a long time and I'm going to go out of compliance, if I wait a few months, I might give them earlier in the season. Don't forget though, about half of the vaccines we routinely give, the core vaccines and some of the at-risk, are because of insects that spread diseases. West Nile, Eastern and Western equine encephalomyelitis. So you don't want to give those in the non-mosquito season. Like there would be no reason in, say, the northern climates, Minnesota, Massachusetts, to give West Nile in January because there's no mosquitoes. January, February, March, maybe April. So I tend to time those just before the critters are going to come out. And when you give a vaccine, it takes about 2 weeks to effect, if it's a booster and not a primary. Which is another thing I think about. I want this horse to be protected at a certain time. If it's a booster, then it's about 2 weeks at a time. But if it's an initial series and you're giving a shot every say 3 weeks, it might take a month or two then to reach peak protection.
Okay.
So then I want to back up.
If you don't know your horse's history and you don't know if it had vaccines previously, how long roughly can a horse go between, like if he missed his booster for a couple of years, is there a point where it resets and then he doesn't have that primary anymore?
We don't know that. That's an under-researched area.
Okay.
We don't know the answer to that. There are a few equine diseases like rabies that we have the ability to take a titer on. They don't tell you protection as much, like functionality. They just tell you, does your horse have antibodies to this at a level that should be protected? But so it's an area that needs more research in it. Other things I think about, this is one I'm thinking about right now. Is there a clinic, show, or other event that I want my horse to be protected at, yet not sore for? So if I'm giving these injections almost anywhere, the neck, very common area, the hips, I tend to give mine in the pectoral muscles, the chest muscles, because they're very low. So if there's a problem, any swelling goes to the low point, and they're very easy to drain there. But also the front legs are constantly moving and working that area. So it's a really nice place to give vaccinations. But I've got a clinic coming up, and I don't want to give a vaccine within about 2 weeks before that, in case there's an adverse event or soreness. So that's something.
Newman appreciates that.
Yeah,
He likes to feel his best.
Never get vaccines would be his. And I think about, is my horse one of a special population, like a broodmare? They have very specific vaccination needs. Foals, a horse that's rescued and maybe not the healthiest. Senior horses have special needs. So those are the questions I ask myself. Not really the ones she did, but I think it's a good way to get started in the conversation. And this is a conversation you should absolutely have with your veterinarian, because they know what's endemic to your area of the country. For example, I've never vaccinated a horse for botulism because we don't have that where I practiced. But in some parts of the country, it is rampant. So your vet will know that.
Okay. Last but not least, question number 5, submitted by
Oh, no. Not. Oh,
submitted
you're tricking me.
by What Eck on Instagram.
Ooh, okay.
I know, somebody else fought their way into the top 5.
5 for 5 would be amazing.
5 for 5. I mean, gauntlet is thrown. The challenge is out there for you guys. And What Eck asks, what is Cushing's and what is it caused by? What can I do to manage it?
Okay, so you'll help me make sure I answer each of those questions. So the first one is...
I can keep track of the questions. I will not be doing the answering.
Okay. What is Cushing? So the other name for it, the name that your veterinarian might use, is Pituitary Pars Intermedia Dysfunction, or PPID. So here we go with the acronyms. And it's a collection of clinical signs that are associated with an endocrine dysfunction. So what happens is your pituitary gland, and there's 3 parts. That's why it's narrowed down to the middle part, pars intermedia, is under negative inhibition. So it's being kept in check by another section of the brain called the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is one of its jobs, many jobs, is to send over a signal, a neurotransmitter, dopamine specifically, to the pituitary and say, calm down, keep calm and carry on, just chill, and then everything's fine. But as age, oxidative stress happens to horses, so this is a senior horse disease, then the hypothalamus doesn't do as good a job sending over that signal, and the pituitary is unchecked, and it becomes enlarged and overactive dysfunction. And so then it releases some hormones. ACTH is probably the best known of those. And then we have this collection of clinical signs. And so it might be a long and curly hair coat, which we call hypertrichosis. It could be weight loss, specifically muscle loss. And here I'm thinking over the top line and the bottom line or the underline, the belly. Increased susceptibility to infections, so the immune system is dampened. Laminitis is a problem. They might urinate more frequently and then drink more. So it is truly a cluster or collection of clinical signs. And together, you begin to notice things not quite right with your horse, even behavior, attitude changes, and you talk to your veterinarian, and then they come out and test. So.
Okay. So we've got what is it? What is it caused by? What can I do to manage it?
Oh, manage it. All right. So, well, I guess we can go on with your vet. So your veterinarian comes out and diagnoses, and it's a pretty simple test now. Now it's just an ACTH test, and it's a one-time blood draw. So it's pretty simple. It used to be an overnight and a fast, and you give something, and that's all done. So once your veterinarian has a number, there is an FDA-approved medication for it called Percent, which is, the active ingredient is pergolide. And so you give that and you retest and you look for the clinical signs, the long curly hair coat. These horses, they don't shed out in the spring. That's sort of the classic, what you see.
So if these aren't working, they might have a problem.
Call your vet, that's right. So if the blood work comes back like in 30 days better and the horse begins to shed out, then you're on the right track. And if not, then maybe test the blood again and maybe the medication needs changed. So that's the medication side of it. There are some supplements specifically targeting like the muscle loss. So you can add back in extra amino acids, lysine and methionine and threonine, to help build up that top line. You can add in some antioxidants because we know the hypothalamus is not working properly because of oxidant-induced injury. So get those going. Some omega-3 fatty acids to help balance the inflammatory and anti-inflammatory side. And there are some other herbs, adaptogens would be great to support the immune system. Feeding, you don't know what you'll need to feed or how you'll need to feed unless your veterinarian does the test for Cushing's as well as a second test, the test for insulin resistance. Because you can have Cushing's alone, and that's pretty manageable. You just feed to the body condition score that the horse should be at, and you feed to their teeth and whatever issues they might have. But if they also have insulin resistance diagnosed with the oral sugar test, then you need to reduce the sugars and starches. So it's things like soaking the hay, or having them wear a muzzle, or not feeding or at least reducing grain, and watching the treats that you give. So no longer a bag of peppermints or a bag of carrots. I know people that do that. But you don't have to do those things unless your horse has insulin resistance as well as the PPID.
Okay. You talked a couple of times about a word that I think we're pretty familiar with here at SmartPak, or a phrase, but I think some of our fans might be less familiar with, and it brings me almost back to the same grade that I was in when I was learning about photosynthesis. Oxidation or oxidative stress. And so the way that I think most people might be familiar with it is if you think of oxidizing, you might think of rust on metal.
Yeah, that's good.
And so hopefully, unless we're talking about the horseshoes, the horse shouldn't be experiencing rust. So what kind of oxidative stress are horses exposed to, and how does that happen?
Yeah, so you think of normal things like sunlight, you know, with the ozone layer and all that, and chemicals and just the environment and life itself. I mean, exercise induces oxidant injury, oxidative stress. And so it's when free radicals are generated, and you need antioxidants in your body to capture them as they're generated. So vitamin E is an excellent antioxidant. Vitamin C, vitamin A, there's some other ones. I like alpha lipoic acid because it's both fat and water soluble, so it can go everywhere and gather up these harmful agents that are released. So if you have antioxidants on board through the diet, selenium is one, it partners with vitamin E, then you're in better shape than if your horse is dealing with this oxidative stress on his own.
That all horses are exposed to
and people
all the time.
All the time, yeah. So, and if there's more oxidative stress going on, then they're going to burn through their normal amount of antioxidants they have, and so it helps to have more.
Okay. So we got through our 5 questions. I just have a quick 6th bonus question. If I wrote a script for my movie Plant Business, would you read it?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wait, can I be in it?
Oh,
can I be in it?
Yes, you can do the
I'll
voice.
do a voiceover?
Would you want to be the voice of the grass, or would you want to be the voice of the sun?
Oh, the grass.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think you're
grass.
much more of a grass personality.
Yeah.
You feel like you're really springing up. I like it. All right, I hope you guys will watch it. It's going to be great. Spring 2018. So that's all we have those are all the real questions and that one bonus question. And thank you guys all for submitting the questions. We love reading your questions. We love watching what you vote for, and we're always happy to answer them, especially if we can bring props and show some of our favorite things. If you guys have questions for the next video, including if you want to ask that question about laminitis.
And Valerie can keep asking questions.
Valerie, if you've got more questions,
bring them on.
I mean, someone could go 5 for 5 and unseat you. You can submit your questions with hashtag AskTheVetVideo, and you can submit them on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, in our blog comments. You can email customercare@smartpak.com, or you can comment on YouTube videos, Instagram posts. Just don't forget to use the hashtag so that we can gather all of your questions. And questions will be accepted for our next video until March 30th, and then you can vote on YouTube, Twitter, or our blog to vote for your question. If your question was answered in this video or in previous videos, email us at customercare@smartpak.com and let us know.
Valerie.
Yes, you, Valerie, for your multiple gift cards. Don't forget to email us. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss a future episode or the premiere of our new film, Plant Business.
Now we got to think of it. Is that the title?
Plant Business has to be the title.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
It works.
All right. Well, thanks for watching and have a great ride.